I always find it really interesting when someone who's really good at their job showcases it by not doing their job. An all-star basketball shooter making an extra pass, an editor refusing to cut away, sitting on a shot much longer than you'd expect, or a sound designer using silence. Because choosing not to cut is still an editing decision, and letting a scene sit in silence, especially when done right, can be one of the best ways to express skilled sound design. Welcome to a new running series called Micro Deep Dives. My name is Pei, and today we're talking about when great sound design is. At this point, we've probably all heard that Miles Davis quote that says, "Don't play what's there, play what's not there," implying the notes that they don't play are just as important to a jazz legend as the ones they do. And this applies to all art. Deliberate omission of a component can add so much to dynamics. And a recent favorite example of this comes from the movie Look Back. There are a multitude of reasons to talk about this movie, but today I want to focus on its sound design. Sound design involves the recording, mixing, and editing of any sound in a show or movie. This means the more obvious ones like Foley work, the process of creating any sound effects that you're seeing within a scene. But it also includes voice acting, music, ambience, and others. Sound can enhance a scene drastically. If you've ever watched a movie and pulled the music, it's remarkable how much the difference is. Even I, as a YouTube editor, use sound effects and music to enhance what I'm arguing. So let's dive into a couple amazing examples from Look Back. This story is built around two primary characters, Fujino and Kiyomoto. It explores their evolving relationship across their childhood and exploration of art. It's a story that many have talked about in its exploration of what it means to be an artist, that feels so in touch with the daunting ups and downs that come with trying to create something significant. But it's also deeply in touch with aspects of the human condition that are hard to put into words. The story starts with Fujino drawing 4 manga panels, driven in part through an overwhelming amount of praise from both adults and peers around her. That is, until she shares one of her slots with a truant student, Kiyomoto. And when she sees her art placed against Kiyomoto's in juxtaposition, all of that ego is taken away. Realizing she has to work much harder if she's going to improve, she spends a year dedicating herself to improving her art. This first scene is when she sees her now improved art once again placed against Kiyomoto's, and it's built completely around silence. The scene starts with ambient noise of a classroom, a teacher giving instructions, students talking amongst themselves. But as Fujino looks at the newspaper, the sound fades away, her focus being accented by the design. She compares her art to Kiyomoto's and once again feels inadequate. And then, after 30 seconds of silence and comparison, she breaks the quiet and says, "Yameta." Both the sing-song delivery and the way the ambience fades back in afterwards is really cool. And I think this scene in context works so well. This movie is not afraid of having empty space. Dynamics in stories are really interesting because more important than any individual scene is the context it's placed. There's an example of this that happens twice in the film, where they cut away from a sound that you would expect to hear. And if they had done it any more, it might have felt overused. Take this scene. After spending an entire day together out and about, Kiyomoto has a very heartfelt confession, sharing her fears of leaving her room while also expressing just how much that day meant to her. It's an incredibly sweet and sincere moment, and Fujino cuts that tension with a joke. And then instead of hearing them laugh, we cut to this shot outside of the train car, and we see it. A unique example where silence feels bigger than noise. And they do this again earlier in the film when they're walking through a snowstorm to get to a local convenience store to see how they did in a local competition. And their celebration is once again observed through a pane of glass, seen instead of heard. The use of sound in this film is outstanding. I've actually talked about it in a couple other videos. Look Back is a remarkable piece of art. And these aren't the only small moments where they use silence to enhance a scene. Some scenes that for me to explain would require spoilers also engage in this. This is something that happens all the way across the film. Because outstanding sound design isn't always showy. Sometimes it's about exploring the entire dynamic range of what sound can be, especially well-placed silence. Part of the reason I'm doing these shorter videos is because there's all these things that I'd love to talk about that feel like they're a little too brief. Because the sound design in Look Back is just one component that's so beautifully executed. One of the standout scenes in this movie is set up by a lot of silence and subtle Foley. The creators of Look Back made all the great components feel better with the way they used them cohesively. The silence complements the music, and the music complements the Foley, and all of those capture intense feelings. This movie resonated with me so much, and there were so many subtle components that contributed to that. It feels like every masterpiece is built off of a foundation of thousands of little small contributions. Things that take great components and elevate them even further, where the whole outweighs the sum of its parts. Thanks for exploring this little idea with me, and I'll see y'all next week.